Please be seated. Listen now for God's word to us in this reading from the Gospel according to Matthew chapter 2, verses 13 to 23. Now after they had left, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and flee to Egypt, and remain there until I tell you. For King Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother by night, and went to Egypt, and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet, "Out of Egypt I have called my son." When Herod saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, he was infuriated, and he sent and killed all the children in and around Bethlehem, who were 2 years old or younger, according to the time that he had learned from the wise men. Then was fulfilled what had been spoken through the prophet Jeremiah. A voice was heard in Ramah, wailing and loud lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be consoled, because they are no more. When Herod died, an angel of the Lord suddenly appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt and said, "Get up, take the child and his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who were seeking the child's life are dead." Then Joseph got up, took the child and his mother, and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was ruling over Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And after being warned in a dream, he went away to the district of Galilee. There he made his own home in a town called Nazareth, so that what had been spoken through the prophets might be fulfilled. He will be a Nazarene. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
Well, thank you for being here this morning. I guess the rest of the congregation is still partying, or maybe recovering from partying. If you would permit just a moment of personal privilege on this day when we recall the Magi bearing gifts for the Christ child, I'd like to express my gratitude for all the presents that people gave me this Christmas. I think that I'm 10 pounds heavier today because I've been enjoying them. So thank you for making my holiday shiny and bright. The word shine keeps coming up as I become acquainted with the Potomac Presbyterian Church. The church has a plan for a shining future and a mission project called Project Shine. Over the past several weeks of Advent and Christmas, we've heard the words of the prophets predicting the coming of the light into the world. We have followed the shining star to Bethlehem, and today we celebrate Epiphany. Merriam-Webster's dictionary describes Epiphany as an unusually sudden manifestation or perception of the essential nature or meaning of something, or 2, an intuitive grasp of reality through something as an event, usually simple and striking, or 3, an illuminating discovery, realization, or disclosure, a revealing scene or moment. We followed the star to Bethlehem, and all of these definitions that I just read play a role in the story of the Magi's visit. On this day in the Christian year, we observe Epiphany. The word comes from the Greek and means an appearing that builds on the characteristics of a particular situation. An appearing, a star in the eastern sky. The celestial phenomenon that led the Magi to Bethlehem was a conspicuous appearing. The star revealed the coming of God's promised Messiah to the world. The entire world would be impacted by Christ's visible appearance. And we can see how that has happened in the last 2,000 years plus. The word Epiphany occurs 6 times in the New Testament, always used in relationship to the coming of Christ. This sermon is not not intended to explore the scientific evidence or lack thereof for the astronomical phenomenon that led the Magi to Jesus. But there is an impressive array of conversation about it on the internet if you're curious about it. This morning I invite you to consider the relevance of Epiphany in your life, in my life, in our lives. What moments of insight when an idea or concept, a relationship becomes profoundly clear? Epiphanies have you experienced in your life? A connection between thought and belief converge. A moment of wonder when an overlooked piece nicely fits into the puzzle. These are the small epiphanies that we have, the coming together, the making sense of things. A number of us have experienced spiritual epiphany, a nexus of faith, meaning, and purpose, an awareness of the presence of the holy. Some have experienced an epiphany while alone, others in the context of community. The star led the seekers to Bethlehem, but first they stopped to ask for directions. Their visit was a sign that this baby, born in a backwater part of the Roman Empire, was not just the promised Messiah for the people of Israel, but the Savior of the whole world. And his advent was not with wrath and judgment, but with blessing and identification with us, a coming among us in our human situation. Christ's coming into the world brought to mind the words of the prophets, such as those of Isaiah we read today. I will recount the gracious deeds of the Lord, the praiseworthy acts of the Sovereign One, because of all God has done for us and the great favor to the house of Israel, that God has shown them according to God's mercy, according to the abundance of God's steadfast love. Well, like many blessings, the appearance of this celestial object and the journey of the Magi was a mixed one, a mixed blessing. The innocent inquiries of the wise men with jealous, prone to rage Herod had an unintended and unexpected consequence. Herod was an eccentric and deeply troubled human being. During his reign, he had at least 9 wives and at least 14 children. There may have been more children, but that weren't counted because the births of daughters were often not counted back then. One of his wives was put to death after Herod accused her of treason. Later, he connived to have 2 sons put to death as well, with the permission of Emperor Augustus. Herod had sent a huge financial donation to revive the Olympic Games, which levied the emperor's approval of these executions. Yet, despite the generous donation of the emperor's to the emperor's Olympic Games, even Augustus said of Herod, "I would rather be Herod's dog than Herod's son." The treachery continued. Herod named his eldest son Antipater heir to the throne. Later, Herod grew jealous of the crown prince who was tried for treason and executed. The emperor finally intervened to disallow Herod to kill his other sons, and one of them, Herod Antipas, was the ruler before whom Jesus was brought, bound and chained, and wearing a crown of thorns. Herod was not one to tolerate a contender to the throne, as we can see from this little brief history. The visiting Magi quite reasonably paid a visit to the ruler of the territory over which the star appeared. They went to talk to Herod. The questions about a new king whose birth was predicted by the prophets of old enraged Herod. Once again, the angel visited Joseph in a dream and said, "Get up, take the child and the mother and flee to Egypt, and stay there until further notice. Herod is on the hunt for this child and wants to kill him." As if being a parent isn't stressful enough, Mary and Joseph have a diabolical ruler after them. Herod was enraged to learn that the Magi had given him the slip. And so he sent his soldiers out to commit an atrocity worthy of Hitler's SS. Break into every Jewish home in the region in and around Bethlehem, pull every male baby from the arms of their mothers and fathers and kill them. Joseph had learned to pay attention to his dreams. We remember he'd had dreams before. He and Mary take the baby and run. We can only imagine their fear, their sense of desperation. Over the past few years, news media have brought to us the plight of Syrian refugees. We've seen the despair on their faces and heard the anguish in their voices. They have risked everything to escape their war-torn country, many intent on bringing their children to safety. Mary, Joseph, and the baby Jesus became refugees in a foreign land. We've been starkly reminded during the past few years that the slaughter of the innocents is not an event relegated to the annals of history. The despot today, Bashar al-Assad, is the Herod of today. We would like to think that the world has made progress since the time of the slaughter of the innocents in Bethlehem. What kind of progress? The world, I would say, is almost as treacherous as ever, and children are still the most vulnerable. They are dependent upon the choices we adults make. Often we feel inadequate in our attempts to address the challenges that we face in our world: poverty, hunger, inequality, racism, conflict. So here we are on New Year's Day, a day when people often make resolutions. We make promises to ourselves about changes in habits and lifestyle, habits we want to break or habits we want to cultivate. The practice of making New Year's resolutions dates back at least to 153 BC, when January 1st was fixed as the beginning of the Roman calendar. Two words combined to form January: the name of the mythical god King Janus, and the Latin word inue, which means entrance gate. The god Janus has two faces in order to look backward and forward when engaged in battle. January is the gateway to the new year. We reflect on the past and we look toward the future. Romans viewed the new year as an opportunity to seek forgiveness from their enemies and also to exchange gifts. Ever since then, people have been making resolutions as the new year rolls around. Now, according to Forbes.com, only about 8% of people fulfill their New Year's resolutions. I keep trying to make it simpler every year. Fewer, I think maybe fewer. That's not a very high percentage. Whether or not you make a long list of resolutions or keep it to 2 or 3 resolutions, we have half a chance of accomplishing. As Christians, we are encouraged to aspire to more closely follow Jesus and bear witness in our discipleship to him. Jesus preached to his disciples, "You are the light of the world." A list of the most common resolutions reveals a preoccupation with self, except for one. There's a list of 10, And one of them says, help others in their dreams. The rest of the common resolutions have to do with, losing weight, spending time with family, that sort of thing. Help others in their dreams. That caught me as a worthy resolution to have. Perhaps instead of a list of 10 or more resolutions, we ought to adopt only a few, including one that motivates us to get outside our preoccupation with self and invest in others. What does it mean for us to follow the light of Christ in this new year? How is God presenting us with opportunities to shine the light for others who have hopes and dreams to fulfill? How will we lead others toward the light? May one of our resolutions this year be to illumine the dark corners of our world and to be those who reflect the one who came, the light of the world, Jesus.